and welcome to another video from IELTS Master. For today's video, we will be doing the last part of the reading, and this reading was taken from a book which had 101 readings. So 101 readings as in like the passages were 101. So that being said, I will be providing the link how to download that book. Whenever you're going to the website, you can just click on the download and you will be getting that book too. And that book is, I would say, it is not something that you would have any problem to solve the readings, because it is kind of moderate readings that is there, and the readings that you might have seen in the examinations too. So this will just give you a few more reading passages to practice. So if you're new to my channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And if you're already a subscriber, you can share the video, you can hit on the bell button to get all the notifications, you can comment in the video and let me know what else do you need for IELTS to prepare in a better way, because I have seen students, they have issues with reading, they have issues with writing. Rarely I do see students struggling with their listening or speaking. So reading and writing are the two main things that I try to focus on for the videos. And for now, I'm focusing more and more on reading, because I have seen most of the students, they are struggling with the reading to get better bands. And they say that some reading, they are so tricky that it is really hard for us to understand that what should we be doing in order to solve them. So the only solution that I have is practice. And if you practice along with me, you will be able to see what are the ways in which I'm trying to give the explanation. Or sometimes I also give some tips or tricks, anything like that. It comes randomly whenever I'm doing any reading. Whenever I see something, it comes just like that. So if you follow along with me in the reading, you will be able to see that and solve the reading by yourself. I will be trying to explain the reading first, and then we will be focusing on the questions. If you want to just go on to the passage and try to solve the questions from there, you can go ahead and do that. If you want to follow along the video, you can just wait till we are the end of the reading passage and then you can focus on the questions. It is up to you. You can pause the video right now and try to solve the questions in 20 minutes or so and then come back, resume the video and follow along. So let's start with the reading. So for today the reading is Mechanisms of Linguistic Change. Let's see what this reading says. A. The changes that have caused the most disagreement are those in pronunciation. We have various sources of evidence for the pronunciations of earlier times, such as the spellings, the treatment of words borrowed from other languages or borrowed by them, the descriptions of contemporary grammarians and spelling reformers, and the modern pronunciation in all the language and dialects concerned. So the first line is not the first line, the second line is kind of a long line that you can see with so many punctuations, and again at the end you don't see a full stop or a period. So for this reading, I would say that whenever you're seeing that word in capital, you should be demarcating that this sentence is done and this is a new sentence. But again, in the examination, I hardly doubt that they will be giving you something in which there will be mistake with the pronunciation. God forbid you don't get anything like that, because sometimes you can easily get confused. Okay, next line. From the middle of the 16th century, there are in England writers who attempt to describe the position of the speech organs for the production of English phonemes and who invent what are in effect systems of phonetic symbols. These various kinds of evidence combined with a knowledge of the mechanisms of speech production can often give us a very good idea of pronunciation of an earlier age, though absolute certainty is never possible. So, again, another typo you can see like US. So, it will be us. So, in the first para, that is the A para, they are talking about pronunciation, and you can see that they are also talking about how, like, what were the mechanisms of those pronunciation. But again, they are also saying that it is not for like certain, there is no hard and fast rule that you have to pronounce that word in that particular way. There can be like different variation by which people pronounce something, right? Because if you think that your community has a different kind of accent, you will be speaking in that way only, unless and until you see somebody speaking in a different accent and you might feel that, wow, I like that accent and I want to follow that. So, unless and until that happens, we, the human beings, we tend to speak or we tend to pronounce in the accent that we are having all around us, like the surroundings. We see how they are pronouncing and we do the same thing. So, let's proceed to the next para. And here we had the word here, phoneme. I saw that there, yeah. So here we had that word phonemes or phoneme, you can say. It was the meaning for that word can be like how you can distinct the sound. For example, the words like pad, P-A-D, pat, B-A-T, bad, B-A-D, bat, B-A-T. So this is like something with which you will be able to distinguish a group of words or something like that. You can also try to see more for that in the dictionary, or you can Google, because I know nobody uses a physical dictionary nowadays. They like to Google, and you can get the Oxford Dictionary online, Oxford or Cambridge, and you can check for the meaning. Whenever you are going through a reading passage, sometimes it is really hard to know what exactly the word means. But if you are not thinking about the particular word, but thinking along with the background, like with the first para, even if I don't know the meaning of phoneme, I would be thinking like production of English phoneme and who invent what are in effect system of phonetic symbols. Phonetic symbols, I know something that is regarding pronunciation. Phoneme might be something that is related to that. So that's how I tried to relate when I was a student, and it worked. So if you try to do that, not thinking about the particular word, but thinking with all the like sentences that you have in the passage, it will give you an idea. Might be a vague idea, but yeah, you can carry on with that and you can get good marks with that too. Nobody knows every single word and every single meaning of those words. So it is quite usual for us to make mistakes. Next, B. When we study the pronunciation of a language over any period of a few generations or more, we find there are always large scale regularities in the changes. For example, over a certain period of time, just about all the long A vowels in a language may change into long E vowels, or all the B consonants in a certain position, for example, at the end of a word, may change into P consonants. Such regular changes are often called sound laws. So, yeah, what is being said in these lines? They are trying to say that over a certain period of time, there can be something that happens, and this can be when one consonant is getting replaced by another consonant, or a vowel is getting replaced by another vowel. So these kind of things has happened, and also this will be happening. So this has happened, will be happening, and the change will go on and on. And again, they are saying there are no universal sound laws. Because if you're thinking something in the universal level, it will be the fixed, like it will be there, fixed, and you won't be able to change that. So it is nothing, like nothing is like constant, it is ever changing. That's what they're trying to say. Even though sound laws often reflect universal tendencies, but simply particular sound laws for one given language or dialect at one given period. So, yeah, there can be some laws like you gotta pronounce this word in this way, or you gotta pronounce this word in a different way. But that is happening for a certain period of time, for a certain group of people, or it's like a community that this is happening and there are some kind of laws. For example, the word often. You can say often, you can say often, you can say it in any manner you want, and often is reflecting like the sound laws of a particular region for a particular time, and often is also doing the same. So both are correct in their own world, I would say. Let's proceed to C. It is also possible that fashion plays a part in process of change. It suddenly plays a part in the spread of change. One person imitates another, and people with the most prestige are most likely to be imitated, so that a change that takes place in one social group may be imitated more or less accurately by speakers in another group. So these lines are so correct. If you try to think, for example, you have a role model in your life. It can be an actor, an actress, a politician, anybody. So if you have a role model, you try to imitate that person. You try to follow that person. Even if you are having somebody in your life like your parents whom you admire, you will be like, you will love to follow them. You will love to imitate them. So, fashion plays a part in process of change. Yeah, we know that. And how? It says one person is imitating another. For example, when I moved to Canada from India, I came to know that people pronounce certain words in a different way. I'm not imitating everything, but sometimes you have to imitate so that people can get your words correctly. In India, we used to call Toronto. In Canada, when I came, I saw some group of people call that Toronto. So, seeing that, if I say Toronto, they will just take some time to think, oh, she's talking about Toronto. But if I'm speaking in their way, like how they're saying, it is not a negative point, but it is about communication. Again, some people might have like communication or pronunciation when it comes to particular words, like you can say percentage in India, that it is 100%, it is 100%, like that we say. But in Canada, I had trouble sometimes making people like understand when I say percentage, and they were like, what? So it was like percentage sometimes, or any kind of variation I had to adapt. So similarly, this happens when you are imitating, and also, yeah, when you're trying to make somebody understand, for sure. But coming back to the para, when a social group goes up or down in the world, its pronunciation may gain or lose prestige. It is said that after a Russian Revolution of 1917, the upper class pronunciation of Russian, which had formerly been considered desirable, became, on the contrary, an undesirable kind of accent to have, so that people try to disguise it. So they are talking about an era like in here after the Russian Revolution. The upper class pronunciation used to be something that people were following like a fashion trend, you can say. But after that revolution, it happened and like something happened, and people tried to avoid that pronunciation. So it can happen, like it is kind of a fashion, it comes and goes. So, same with the pronunciation, a trend with one accent might come and it might fade away eventually with time. Some of the changes in accepted English pronunciation in the 17th and 18th centuries have been shown to consist in the replacement of one style of pronunciation by another style already existing. And it is likely that such substitutions were a result of the great social changes of that period, the increased power and wealth of the middle classes, and their steady infiltration upwards into the ranks of landed gentry probably carried elements of middle class pronunciation into upper class speech. So, yeah, they are also saying about some possible reasons or causes that had made changes, and they said that it was like one pronunciation replaced another like already existing pronunciation, and that happened. D, a less specific variant of the argument is that the imitation of children is imperfect. They copy their parents' speech but never reproduce it exactly. This is true, but it is also true that such deviation from adult speech are usually corrected in later childhood. So now we are talking about the way children they try to pronounce things. And yeah, we have seen children, they have imperfections because when they are in such a young age, they don't have their like they are trying to learn the words, and gaining like perfection at that stage is next to impossible, because just imagine when you try to like when you are learning something, even at this age, if you try to learn another language, you won't be having that perfection. Same with children, they don't have that perfection, but as long as they are practicing, they are listening to those words over and over, they will be getting every single material needed for that speech to get corrected. Perhaps it is more significant that even adults show a certain amount of random variation in their pronunciation of a given phoneme, even if the phonetic context is kept unchanged. Yeah, that happens. Even we make mistakes, even like not mistakes, sometimes we just pronounce a certain word or a group of words in a certain way. So, and that happens even though we know that we should not be like pronunciation in that way, pronouncing, oops, in that way, but we do that like this. This happened by accident. This, however, cannot explain changes in pronunciation unless it can be shown that there is some systematic trend in the failures of imitation. If they are merely random deviations, they will cancel one another and there will be no net change in the language. So even if there we know there are phonetic sounds and this is this, like this is pronounced as this, but we are maybe pronunciation like pronouncing something in a different way. For example, I have seen some people who used to like pronounce the mask that we wear as max or max, like that, and they know how it should be pronounced, still they're making mistakes. Again, if they know that there is another way of uttering that sound, they will be, maybe they are uttering that in that wrong way too, and these will be just canceling each other. So that won't be changing anything because we have the rules after all. E. One such force which is often invoked is the principle of ease or minimization of effort. The change from fussy to fuzzy would be an example of assimilation, which is a very common kind of change. Assimilation is the changing of a sound under the influence of a neighboring one. For example, the word scant was once scamped, but the M has been changed to N under the influence of the following T. So you can see that the variation in here, like they are also saying about the principle of ease. Ease means how easy is it to pronounce a certain type of word, and minimization of effort means you are putting less and less effort and you can convey that same information to somebody. And they have given an example of scant, which was once scamped. Greater efficiency has hereby been achieved because N and U are articulated in the same place with the tip of the tongue against the teeth ridge or ridge, like again, whereas M is articulated elsewhere within the two lips. So the place of articulation of the nasal consonant has been changed to conform with that of the following plosive. A more recent example of the same kind of thing is the common pronunciation of football as football. So, yeah, football. You might have noticed recently I have seen that they are like there is a tendency of people to compress the word. Like football, you are pronunciation like pronouncing the T, and in football, it's like football. There is a P, but there is no P when you are pronouncing that thing. Again, there are certain words where we have seen that the words or like the letters are totally taken off. For example, whenever somebody says probably, I have seen people saying probably, which is like Prolly, which is easier for them to pronounce. So, yeah, if that's easy, they will be using that more and more. But again, we have the original word, we know how it has been changed. So, that is what the passage is saying here. If assimilation is not the way in which we change our pronunciation in order to increase efficiency. It is very common for consonants to be lost at the end of a word. In Middle English, word final N was often lost in unstressed syllables so that bacon to bake changed from bacon to baker and later to bake. Consonant clusters are often simplified. At one time, there was a T in words like castle, Christmas, and an initial K in words like night and no. Sometimes a whole syllable is dropped out when two successive syllables begin with the same consonant. Haplology. A recent example is temporary, which in Britain is often pronounced as if it were temporary. So, yeah, for the example that I just had here with like the British pronunciation, you can see a lot of examples like that, like dropping a word, like probably, for example, they're pronouncing it in that way. Again, some names of cities are also pronounced by dropping words, like Toronto, you can say, or Calgary, you can say, like you are not pronouncing it as the spelling Calgary, but Calgary, like Cagry, Calgary. That's how they pronounce things. And that also depends, like we have seen the passage and now we know that there can be different accents and how we get adapted to one accent. We can also get rid of one accent. So next we have the questions. You can pause the video, you can try to solve the questions by yourself and take 20 minutes. After taking that whole time, come back, resume the video, and we will be following with the explanation. Now let's start with the questions that we are having for this passage. Questions 27 to 30. Complete the summary below. Choose no more than 3 words from the passage for each answer. So that is the word limit. Write your answers in boxes 27 to 30 on your answer sheet. So let's start with the questions that we are having for 27 to 30 and see from where we are getting the answers. The pronunciation of living language undergo changes throughout thousands of years. Large-scale, regular changes are usually called dash. Let's move to the passage and let's see if we can see anything in our starting para, that is A. In the starting para, they're mostly giving an introduction, so I don't see anything where they're talking about anything going on like for a period of time. But if we just move to para B, we can see when we study a pronunciation of a language over a period of a few generations or more, we find there are always large scale regularities in the changes. For example, over a certain period of time, just about all the long A vowels in a language may change into long E vowels, or all the B consonants in a certain position, for example, at the end of a word, may change into P consonants. Such regular changes are often called sound laws. There are no universal sound laws, even though sound laws often reflect universal tendencies, but simply particular sound laws for one given language or dialect at one given period. So, with this para, we can see large scale regularities. That was something we saw in the question. Large scale regular changes. So, the answer for this 27th question would be sound laws, and you can see it is within the word limit, that is less than 3. So it is like sound laws, that would be the answer. Let's go back to the question. And firstly, the influence of one language on another. When one person imitates another pronunciation, the most precedes the imitation always partly involving factor of dash. And we read when person is imitating something for the accent of the dialect, and it was seen not in the B para because we just read B para. Let's see what C para says. It is also possible that fashion plays a part in the process of change. It is certainly plays a part in the spread of change. One person imitates another. So we are getting the exact words that is asked in the question, which was when one person imitates another. So let's go back to the passage. One person imitates another, and people with the most prestige are most likely to be imitated. So we had seen the word over the like the question side too, so that a change that takes place in one social group may be imitated more or less accurately by speakers in another group. So let's go back to the question involving the factor of, so that would be for sure this word fashion. So fashion would be the answer for question number 28. Let's check the next one. Secondly, the imitations of children from adults' language sometimes are dash and may also contribute to this change if there are insignificant deviations. So this will be though because they have again made a typo, though later they may be corrected. So now they're talking about children and as we have seen in the para that children had imperfections when they tried to pronounce certain words, let's go back to the passage, and we have already seen what C para says. So let's jump to D para and let's see if we can see anything that is more or less we can recognize that. D. A less specific variant of the argument is that the imitation of children is imperfect. They copy their parents' speech but never reproduce it exactly. This is true, but it is also true that such deviations from adult speech are usually corrected in later childhood. Let's go back to the question. So, question 29. Secondly, imitations of children from adults' language sometimes are dash. So, the dash would be imperfect. Dash would be this word imperfect. Finally, for those random variations in pronunciation, the deeper evidence lies in the dash or minimization of effort. So now for question 30, we have read minimization somewhere in the passage, not in D, I would say. Let's move to E. One such force which is often invoked is the principle of ease or minimization of effort. So we can see minimization of effort. Let's go back to the question in the dash or minimization of effort. So the second word is the minimization of effort. So the first word is principle of ease. Three words that we can see, and it says no more than three words. So we are within the criteria of the question. So it will be principle of ease for question 30. Now let's start with the next set of questions that we have from 31 to 37. And now we can clearly see they are true, false, not given. And let's read the instructions. Do the following statements agree with the information given in reading passage 3? In boxes 31 to 37 on your answer sheet, write true if the statement agrees with the information, false if the statement contradicts the information not given, if there is no information on this. So let's try and see that what are the results and from where we are getting those like explanations. 31. It is impossible for modern people to find pronunciation of words in an earlier age. So with this question, it is being said that it something is impossible. So it has been like it is saying something is extremely impossible means like impossible means extreme. It is and like it won't be possible like the total negative. So sometimes in reading, this is not a tip, but yeah, like common sense, we have seen sometimes in the reading that if something is said like that, there are chances that either it is false or not given, because this is also a way that the examiner tries to see whether you are reading the whole passage or not. Sometimes they do that, but again, sometimes it is true too. So you have to read the passage, but whenever you are seeing something like extreme, negative or positive, like impossible, or all of this, none of this, you can just double check and see if it is really impossible or maybe it is maybe false or something like that. So let's check the passage and see if we are getting any information for question 31. Going to the passage, so we would be checking that from the beginning and we would try to see if there is something that is matching or there is nothing that is matching. And the question was again, we will be reading that it is impossible for modern people to find pronunciation of words in an earlier age. So let's check the passage. Let's see that if we have anything regarding the earlier age or earlier period. The changes that have caused the most disagreement are those in pronunciation. We have various sources of evidence for the pronunciation of earlier times. So we have various sources of evidence, and it is impossible are totally contradicting each other. If you see this question, go back to the passage and see this line. It is like totally opposite. And getting this as opposite means your answer would be false for question 31. So again, you saw something as extreme and you got totally, which is opposite. Next question. Let's go back to the question. Yeah. The great change of language in Russian history is related to the rising status and fortune of middle classes. We read about this in the Russian Revolution somewhere. So let's try to see. Yeah, in C. It is said that after the Russian Revolution of 1917, the upper class pronunciation of Russian, which had formerly been considered desirable, became, on the contrary, an undesirable kind of accent to have, so that people tried to disguise it. So here we can see something is being said about the Russian Revolution that we can see in the question, like great change of language in Russian history. And again, it says that it is related to the rising status and fortune of middle classes. Do we see anything, anything which says like that in the passage? Like anything regarding middle classes or fortune, something in that line? I don't see that. Like nothing that can be said related to the rising status and fortune of middle classes from these lines. So, for that reason, if you don't find that information after going through the lines, like the correct spot, it would be not given. And again, instead of writing NG, please write not given because that helps you a lot in the examination. It is kind of that proverb that a stitch in time saves nine. So if you practice now, you will be like having that habit imbibed and you will be writing not given in the examination. Next question 33. All the children learn speeches from adults while they assume that certain language is difficult to imitate exactly. So for this question, we have to again jump back to the passage and see where they have been saying about children, imperfection, and so on. So if we, yeah, check the deep era. A less specific variant of the argument is the imitation of children is imperfect, the copy of their parents' speech, but never reproduce it exactly. Again, if we read the next line, this is true, but it is also true that such deviation from adult speech are usually corrected in later childhood. So, oops, if we go back to the question and check that, all the children learn speeches from adults while they assume that certain language is difficult to imitate exactly. So, in that, if we try to again, like sometimes in reading, it can be the scene that it is not exactly given. Like the passage can be something that is twisted and turned, and sometimes it is like whenever you're going through the passage, it's better to read the question once, go to the passage, check the lines, come back to the question, and again go to the passage for like maybe a final time to think that, yeah, this is the only explanation that could have been, and then give that answer. So, for the question, all the children learn speeches from adults while they assume that certain language is difficult to imitate exactly. If we check the passage here, if we try to see anything regarding assumption, assume anything. A less specific variant of the argument is this. They copy their parents' speech, yeah, we can see that, but never reproduce it exactly. So this is true, but it is also true that such deviation from adult speech are usually corrected in later life. So do you think or do you see anything regarding assumption of certain language is difficult to imitate exactly like that, the word that is like the words that are at the end? This assumption, I don't see that. Nowhere I can see that is given, and for that reason it would be not given as the answer. Next question. Pronunciation with causal inaccuracy will not exert big influence on language changes. So again, that this word causal, like causal or causal, reminds me of one thing. There was a time when I had a friend who used to pronounce this as casual. But yeah, it might look like casual, but it is not casual. It is causal or causal. Like it is for like the cause of this. So causal or causal. So yeah, let's check the question again. Pronunciation with causal inaccuracy will not exert big influence on language changes. Yeah, again, sometimes you see will not, like they are saying something that will be the extreme. This can be true, this can be false. So if we try to check the passages for question 34 and see from where we are getting the exact essence of the word or something that can be seen like a ditto copy paste, let's see. So if we just try to read few more lines from D, let's see. This, however, cannot explain changes in pronunciation unless it can be shown as there is some systematic trend in the failures of imitation. So, trend, we can see like a fashion trend or something is something that happened in the past or it was happening. If they are merely random deviations, they will cancel one another out. There will be no change in the language. So, if we now again go back to the question and see if something can be related, pronunciation with causal inaccuracy will not exert a big influence on language changes. Okay, so for that, if we try to see if they, from that, if they are merely random deviations. So if they are random, so they did not have anything with like accuracy, like causal accuracy, they are inaccurate if thought in that way. So if they do not have that accuracy, so it won't be exerting any big influence because they will be canceling each other out. And for that reason, this question was not that easy, but for that reason, it will be true. But you have to analyze sometimes, like mere random deviations, if there is something like that randomly happening, there is no cause for that. Like sometimes it happens, sometimes it not, and those will be canceling each other out. So yeah, that is true, and it is something that is exactly not exactly copy paste, but the essence of that is given in question 34. For that reason, it will be true. 35. The link of MT can be influenced, being pronounced as NT. So let's go back to the para or the passage and let's see if we can get anything regarding MTNT. I remember that we were going through some words and there was an example in here, para E. For example, the word scant was once camped, but the M has been changed to N under influence of the following T. So these lines are saying what we read in the question, which was the link of empty can be influenced, being pronounced as empty. Yeah, so we can see that totally. And this is something which is like given as is, and this will be true. Now let's check question 36. The G in nat not being pronounced will not be spelt out in the future. So they're giving you an example like G in the gnat, but I don't remember reading about anything. I read about the word K and T, but again, something about the gnat that is in the beginning. I don't see that. Let's read the last lines like consonant clusters are often simplified. At one time, there was a T in words like castle, Christmas, and an initial K in words like night and no. Sometimes a whole syllable is dropped out when two successive syllables begin with the same consonant. A recent example is temporary, which in Britain is often pronounced as if it were temporary. So the example is not there, and for that reason, we can say that this is not given. Last question for the set is the sound of temporary cannot wholly present its spelling. So if we go back to the question, or sorry, the passage, we read these last lines. So the sound of temporary here, and if we go back to the question, the sound of temporary cannot wholly present its spelling. So if you say temporary, it is also the spelling that we hear with the sound. Like if you hear temporary, you will be feeling, yeah, it is temporary. But again, the sound, by the sound, it is not representing any kind of spelling. So this line would be a true statement or a sentence because, yeah, there can be variation, there can be deviations. That is exactly said in the passage that there is a deviation with that. So, with that being said, we have already done 31 to 37 and we will be proceeding towards 38 to 40. Questions 38 to 40. Let's read. Look at the following sentences and the list of statements below. Match each statement with the correct sentences A to D. Write the correct letter A to D in boxes 38 to 40 on your answer sheet. A. Since the speakers can pronounce it with less effort. B. Assimilation of a sound under the influence of a neighboring one. C. It is a trend for changes in pronunciation in a large scale in a given period. D. Because the speaker can pronounce N and T both in the same time. So let's check the questions that we have 38, 39, 40, and let's see which sentence or which statement is going with which one. 38. As a consequence, B will be pronounced as P. So for that, let's move to our passage to see where we were reading something regarding B, P, or something like that. And for that, if we are checking the last few paras, we might get the answer from there too. Like sometimes wherever you are leaving the lines, you can get your answer from there, but not always. So if we try to see anything with B or P, can we see that? I don't see that. So let's move. And then I don't see it here, but we have read that somewhere. So if we go to the B para, I can see something here, B consonant, P consonant. Let's read. When we study the pronunciation of a language over any period of a few generations or more, we find there are always large-scale regularities in the changes of, for example, over a period of time, just about all the long A vowels in a language may change into long E vowels, or all the B consonants in a certain position. For example, the end of a word may be changed into P consonants. So, about the B consonants and the P consonants, we are getting the information from there. And what they are saying something or like large scale regularities. Let's go back to the question and see if we have anything in here. So it is a trend for changes in pronunciation in a large scale. You're getting the exact word in a given period. So C will be the answer for 38. Let's move to the next question, which is 39. The pronunciation of MT changed to NT. So pronunciation of MT to NT. And we were also reading about the changes. So again, we need to check which paragraph is giving us that MT and NT. And if you remember, we just read that in this question. So wherever you're getting the answer for this question will be the answer for this question. And sometimes these are like Easter egg hunt, I would say, that you will be getting some questions location from some other question. It will be kind of a hint for you. So keep your eye open for that. And with that being said, let's move back to the passages to find where we are getting the answer for question 39. And if we remember well, for that, the scant and scamped thing was somewhere in Principle of Ease para. So if we try to see from where we got that, it can be something that we would be checking in, and in the Principle of E para, if you just go through, for example, the word scant was once scamped, but the M has been changed to N under the influence of the following T. So the MT or the NT, for that we are getting it in here. And let's see what else these lines say. So we know that it is in the E para. So one such force which is often invoked is a principle of ease or minimization of effort. The change of fussy to fuzzy will be an example of assimilation. So assimilation is something that is being said in here, which is a very common kind of change. Assimilation is the changing of sound under influence of a neighboring one. And then they are giving you the example of scant and scamped. Let's go back to our question. Assimilation, we can see that clearly written of a sound under the influence of a neighboring one. Yeah, that is the whole line. And so for that, it will be B as an option. Last question for the day or for the video. The omit of T in the sound of Christmas. And it was almost there in that para only. So let's check the passage. Here we saw something like that with the T in F para, I can see. So assimilation is not the only way in which we change our pronunciation. In order to increase efficiency, it is very common for consonants to be lost at the end of a word, and now they give you the example. Let's read this one. Consonant clusters are often simplified. At one time there was a T in words like castle and Christmas. Let's go back to the question and let's see omit of T in the sound of Christmas. And even if you're not checking that in the passage, I'm not giving you a hint to do that, but even if you're checking, like not checking that, the only options left is D or A. D says because the speaker can pronounce NT both in the same time. So that is nothing. That has nothing to do with that question we have seen in the para. So it will be A, since the speakers can pronounce it with less effort because they were talking about something, increasing efficiency. So that would be the answer for 40. It would be A. And that being said, we have already done all the questions from this passage. So if you like this video and my way of explanation for the reading, please do like my channel, subscribe my channel and share the videos. If you want to comment, go ahead and comment that in the box below. And I would be really happy to see if you have any questions or if you want something to be explained in a better way. If you have any reading that you want me to explain, go ahead and please post that in the comment box. I would be more than happy to do that. Thank you so much. And if you're having an exam in the coming month or the coming week, all the best to you. You can do it for sure.